My fiancée disappeared the day before our wedding, and when she came back, I found out everything we had was built on a lie. If someone had told me the woman I was about to marry would disappear 24 hours before the wedding and come back acting like nothing happened, I would have laughed. But that's exactly what happened. To this day, I still don't know what hit harder, the panic of not knowing where she was, or the cold realization of who she really was when she finally came back. Her name was Vanessa, and we were together for 4 years. Met at a friend's New Year's party, hit it off instantly, did the whole late-night diner date, movie marathons, parents meeting parents thing. She was charming, funny, ambitious. A little private, but hey, who isn't these days? We got engaged on our 3rd anniversary. I proposed during a weekend trip to Asheville, on a hike overlooking the mountains. She cried. I cried. She said yes. Classic moment. From that point on, it was planning mode. I'll admit, she took the reins on most of it. The venue, the guest list, the vendors, all her. I was happy to let her lead. I trusted her. And I was too busy juggling work deadlines to obsess over napkin colors or centerpiece styles. I was just happy we were finally doing this. She made me believe in us. In something solid. Then came the week of the wedding. Everything seemed fine, normal even. We had a small issue with the caterer, a minor freakout over the flower arrangements, but nothing major. The night before the wedding, we had a quick dinner with our immediate families, and she seemed okay. A little nervous maybe, but that made sense. We went our separate ways after dinner. Me to the Airbnb I was staying in with my groomsmen, her to the hotel suite she'd booked with her maid of honor. We texted a bit before bed. Last thing she sent was, "I love you. Can't wait to see you tomorrow." That was at 11:48 p.m. By 9 a.m. the next morning, she wasn't answering texts. By 10, her phone was going straight to voicemail. By 11, her maid of honor, a woman I barely knew, called me in tears saying she hadn't seen Vanessa since the night before. Her stuff was gone from the hotel room. No note. No explanation. I tried to stay calm. People get cold feet. Maybe she needed air. Maybe she went for a walk. Maybe she was with her mom, her dad, anyone. But no one had seen her. Not her family. Not her friends. Not the vendors. Not the venue coordinator. No one. The ceremony was at 4 p.m. By 2:30, the guests were arriving. I was sweating through my shirt. We kept delaying things. I kept saying, she's probably just late. But everyone knew. I knew. She was gone. By 4:15, we officially canceled the ceremony. I stayed at the venue for another 2 hours, still in my suit, hoping, praying, that she would walk through the door with some wild story. A car accident. A health scare. Anything. But nothing. At 6:47 p.m., her dad pulled me aside and said, "I don't know where she is either." And that's when it hit me. She wasn't just late. She wasn't just panicking. She had vanished. No explanation. No goodbye. No closure. Her phone was off. Her social media went dark. Her friends had no idea where she was. Her parents were devastated. Her maid of honor was a wreck. And me? I was standing in front of 100 guests, thousands of dollars deep in wedding expenses, with a cake that said "Forever Starts Now" sitting in the middle of the room. That night, I went back to the Airbnb alone. My groomsmen stayed with me, thank God, because I honestly don't know how I would have handled that night without them. We sat on the porch, drinking beer in our suits like characters from a sad rom-com, trying to make sense of what just happened. But nothing made sense. The next day, I filed a missing person report. Her family insisted she'd never done anything like this before. I believed them. I believed her. I thought maybe she'd been taken, hurt, that she was lying in a hospital somewhere. I barely slept for the next 48 hours. My mind was on a loop of worst-case scenarios. And then, on the 3rd day, I got a text from an unknown number. "I'm okay. I just needed time. I'm sorry." No name. No context. No explanation. I stared at it for a full 5 minutes before I replied. "Where are you?" No response. The number went cold. And that's when something shifted in me. Something that had been tight and panicked and broken snapped. This wasn't fear anymore. It was anger. Because no matter how confused she might have been, you don't vanish like that. Not without a word. Not on your wedding day. Not unless you're hiding something. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared anymore. That part had burned off. I didn't think she was lying in a ditch. I didn't think she was being held against her will. I thought she was hiding. And if she was hiding, it meant she had something, or someone, to hide from me. So I did what any heartbroken, mildly humiliated man in a wrinkled tux would do. I started digging. First, I tried the basics. Reverse searched the number she texted me from. Nothing. Prepaid. Burner phone. Classic. Then I checked her Instagram again, still deactivated. But her Pinterest? Still up. And recently active. Someone was pinning yoga retreats in Colorado and how to start over after a breakdown boards. Yeah, totally subtle. I looked at our joint accounts. Nothing touched. Our bank accounts were clean. She hadn't drained anything, hadn't used the credit card we shared, which was almost more unnerving. She hadn't stolen anything, just vanished. The next day, I went to her apartment. She'd moved into mine about a year before, but kept the lease on her old place for storage. When I got there, the lock had been changed. And the mailbox? Empty. It was like she'd erased herself from her own life, except for one detail. A neighbor. As I was walking back to my car, a woman in her 50s who lived across the hall waved me down. You looking for Vanessa? I nodded, cautiously. She left last week. A guy picked her up in a black SUV. They had luggage. Luggage. Did you see who it was? She shrugged. Tall. Clean cut. Kinda looked like a younger version of her dad, honestly. That sentence hit like a punch to the gut. I thanked her and left, heart racing, mind spinning. Who the hell was the guy? Back at home, I opened her old laptop, the one she said she didn't use anymore, but kept in the closet. She never changed the password. I don't even think she remembered it had auto-sync turned on. That's when I found the emails. Hundreds of them, all under a folder labeled work. But these weren't work emails. They were from him. A guy named Ethan. Some of them were old, years old. Others were recent. The last one, sent 4 days before the wedding. I booked the place. If you're serious, this is your last chance. I don't know what hit me harder, the fact that she had someone else, or the fact that she'd been carrying on this shadow life right under my nose. Weekend trips I thought were girls' weekends. Late night client calls. A whole archive of carefully managed lies. There were love notes. Plans. At least one apartment lease in both their names. In Arizona, of all places. I sat there for hours, scrolling through every message, every attachment, every tiny window into the version of her life that didn't include me. And here's the kicker. This wasn't some "I got scared of commitment" thing. This was premeditated. Calculated. She had an exit plan, and I was never supposed to find it. But now that I had, I wasn't going to sit quietly with it. So I started collecting. Screenshots. Emails. Travel confirmations. Everything. Because if she thought she could rewrite our story into some sad little breakup montage where she followed her heart and took time to find herself, she was about to find out that disappearing acts come with consequences. And I was done playing the guy left at the altar. I was going to be the one holding the script now. I didn't want revenge. At least, not at first. I wanted answers. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted her to look me in the eye and admit what she'd done, that it wasn't just a moment of fear or a breakdown, but a fully choreographed vanishing act. But the longer I waited, the more silence I got. No calls. No follow-up messages. Just that one cold, vague text. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. First, I called off the missing person report. No sense wasting police time when I knew she was alive, hiding, and probably living her new chapter with Ethan, the SUV guy. I told them I'd heard from her, that she was okay. They closed the case. Then, I called her parents. They were still just as confused and heartbroken as I was. Her mom cried on the phone. Her dad, who was normally a total wall of stone, said, "If I ever see her again, I don't even know what I'll say." I didn't tell them everything I found yet. I wanted to be sure of the facts before I shattered what was left of their image of her. But they deserved to know something, so I gave them the sanitized version, that I had reason to believe she left on purpose, and not alone. Her mom just whispered. She always had a way of pretending to be okay while packing a bag in her mind. That line stuck with me. Packing a bag in her mind. That's exactly what she'd done, and I had the email receipts to prove it. So now I had two choices. Move on quietly, let her slip away, or expose the truth. I chose door number 3, set the record straight. See, she'd managed to disappear from her real life, but she hadn't vanished from the internet entirely. Her Pinterest was still active. Her Venmo history had public transactions, and she had a shared Google Drive that, surprise, was still linked to my email from when we were planning the wedding. Inside, a bunch of files, guest lists, vows drafts, seating charts, and a document titled Our Story. It was the speech she was planning to give at the reception. I hadn't seen it before. Curious, I opened it. From the moment we met, I knew you were my safe place. I slammed the laptop shut. She was going to stand in front of all our friends and family and tell them that I was her safe place, while actively planning an escape route with another man. It wasn't just betrayal, it was performance art. And I realized, if she had no problem rewriting the past to fit her version of events, I had every right to share the actual one. So I wrote a letter. Not petty, not cruel, just honest. I attached screenshots, lined up dates, explained everything, from the burner phone text to the lease in Arizona. I left emotion out of it. Just facts. Clean, sharp, and undeniable. And then I sent it. To her parents. To the bridal party. To the close friends who were still asking me what happened. I didn't blast it on social media. I didn't post it publicly. But I made sure the people who deserved to know the truth got it. Reactions poured in within hours. Some were shocked. Some were furious. Some, the ones who knew her better than I did, apparently, said they weren't that surprised. One of her old college friends messaged me and said, I always wondered how long she could keep up the act. And that's when it really hit me. I hadn't been in love with her. I'd been in love with a version of her she created for me. The perfect partner. Loyal, driven, warm. That person never existed. The real Vanessa was someone else entirely. And she was never planning on letting me see that. Until it all fell apart. I thought that would be the end of it. That I'd hit send. The truth would be out there, and I could start the long, messy process of moving on. But 3 days later, she reached out again. Same burner number. New message. You had no right to share that. That was it. No apology. No regret. Just a demand. A scolding. Like I was the one who had crossed a line. I didn't respond. Because at that point, there was nothing left to say. But she wasn't done. A few hours later, she sent another message. You don't understand what it was like. I was trapped. I couldn't breathe. Still playing victim. Still skipping past the part where she planned everything behind my back. Still pretending like she hadn't looked me in the eye 100 times and said forever. And I guess part of me finally understood, not her, but why I didn't see it sooner. Because I wanted to believe her. Because love makes you blind in all the wrong places. Because when someone says they love you and looks like they mean it, your brain fills in the gaps for them. But now, there were no gaps left. Just facts. And with facts, I could finally move on. I blocked the number, deleted the thread, shut down the wedding website, donated the tux, gave the ring to a jeweler friend who melted it down into a pendant. Not for me, but for resale. Said it was some kind of poetic symbolism. I didn't ask. And then, little by little, I started to get my life back. Friends stopped tiptoeing around me. Family stopped giving me those sad, how are you really looks. I started sleeping again. I even went on a couple of dates. Nothing serious, but enough to remember I was still out here, still alive. One day, I ran into someone who had been at the wedding that never happened. He asked how I was doing. I said I was fine. It's crazy, man, he said. I still can't believe she pulled that. Like a movie. I nodded. Yeah, just not the kind I ever wanted to be in. He laughed, and so did I. And here's the thing. When you go through something like this, people always try to find the silver lining for you. At least you found out before the marriage. At least you didn't have kids. Better now than 10 years in. And they're not wrong. But that's not the part that sticks with you. What sticks is the silence. The stillness of a wedding venue when you're the only one left standing in the room. The sound of your phone not ringing. The quiet panic of realizing the person you trusted most had been building an exit strategy while you were writing vows. But eventually, that silence turns into something else. It turns into peace. Real peace. Not because you forget, but because you stop needing answers that won't help you anymore. Vanessa never came back. Not really. She sent a few more texts from other random numbers that I never replied to. As far as I know, she's still in Arizona. Still living her second life. I wish her well, truly. Because you have to be in a really dark place to lie to someone like that. And I hope she finds whatever she was chasing. As for me, I'm good. Not perfect. Not over it. But good. And if I ever do get married someday, I won't need a perfect ceremony or a Mountain View proposal. I'll just need someone who knows how to stay. Even when it's hard. Even when it's boring. Even when it's real. Because forever shouldn't be a performance. It should be a choice, made every single day.